Welcome, wanderers of the shadowed paths, to another descent into the throne of nightmares. I am your guide through the veils of forgotten horrors, where the past claws its way into the present, and bloodlines twist like thorns in the flesh of the unwary. Tonight, we unearth a tale that has slumbered in the crypts of history for centuries, a story of a family ensnared in an eternal web of betrayal and crimson oaths. This is the Grimshaw curse, a legacy where blood is not merely life, but a chain that binds the living to the damned, pulling them inexorably into the abyss. Pause for a moment, dear listener, and let the darkness settle around you. Imagine, if you will, a fog-shrouded manor on the windswept moors of northern England. The year is 1847, but the air carries echoes from centuries prior, whispers that slither through the cracks in time. Rain lashes against leaded windows like accusing fingers tapping insistently for entry. Inside, by a dying fire that sputters and hisses, as if protesting its own extinction, a solitary figure huddles in a high-backed chair upholstered in faded velvet. His name is Elias Grimshaw, the last of his line. Or so he believes, though the shadows in the room seem to mock that notion. In his trembling hands, veined like the roots of an ancient oak, he clutches a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age and stained with what might be ink, or something far more visceral, dark spots that catch the firelight and gleam wetly. As thunder cracks the sky overhead, shaking the very foundations of the manor, Elias reads aloud words that should have remained buried, sealed away in the silence of the grave. The blood remembers. The betrayal endures. None shall escape the circle unbroken. His voice quavers, echoing in the empty room. And for a fleeting instant, the flames in the hearth flare up, casting grotesque shadows on the walls, shadows that twist into shapes of human forms, writhing in agony. But let us not rush headlong into the abyss just yet. Allow me to draw you deeper, step by cautious step, into this labyrinth of familial doom. The Grimshaw family was once a pillar of English society, their fortunes built on coal mines that delved into the earth's black heart, extracting wealth at the cost of countless souls lost to cave-ins, dust-choked lungs, and the unrelenting dark. Yet, beneath the veneer of respectability, the polished silver, the imported silks, the portraits of stern ancestors gazing down from gilded frames, lurked a darkness as profound as those subterranean voids. A curse born from a single act of treachery in the year 1692, during the dying embers of the witch hunts that scarred the land like open wounds. Picture the scene with me. The hysteria of Salem had crossed the Atlantic in whispers carried on trade winds, igniting paranoia in remote villages where superstition still held sway over reason. In the hamlet of Blackthorn Hollow, nestled amid jagged hills that rose like the spines of buried giants, lived two brothers, Reginald and Harlan Grimshaw. Reginald, the elder, was a stern magistrate, his heart as cold as the iron he forged in the family smithy, his judgments delivered with the finality of a gavel's fall. Harlan, the younger, was a dreamer, his spirit untamed like the wild heather on the moors, entangled in a forbidden love with a woman accused of sorcery. Her name was Elara Voss, a healer whose potions mended the sick with herbs gathered under the full moon, but stirred envy and fear among the pious villagers who saw the devil in every unexplained recovery. One fateful night, as torches flickered in the village square like malevolent eyes, Reginald faced a choice that would doom his bloodline. Harlan begged him to spare Elara, revealing in a hushed, desperate voice that she carried his child. A secret heir to the Grimshaw name, a branch that could dilute Reginald's claim. But Reginald, coveting the family estate undivided, saw opportunity in betrayal, a chance to eliminate rivals under the guise of righteousness. He denounced his brother as bewitched, condemning both Harlan and Elara to the flames that would consume them body and soul. As the pyre crackled and popped, sending sparks heavenward like fleeing souls, Elara's final words pierced the night air, carried on the smoke. "The blood betrayed, by blood you shall be bound. Your line will wither in shadows, each generation tasting the knife of kin." Those words were no mere curse uttered in despair. They were a seal, inked in the acrid smoke of burning flesh and the screams of the innocent. From that moment, the Grimshaws prospered outwardly. Their mines yielded fortunes in black gold, manors rose like monoliths against the sky, and their name echoed in the halls of power. But inwardly, a rot set in, insidious and unrelenting. Children turned against parents in fits of unexplained rage, siblings schemed in whispers behind closed doors, and vanishings plagued the family tree like blighted branches snapping in a gale. Whispers of apparitions followed them like faithful hounds, spectral figures with charred skin that flaked like ash, eyes glowing like embers in a dying fire, haunting the halls and demanding restitution in voices that rasped like wind through dry bones. Why does this tale grip us so, wrapping cold fingers around our hearts? Because it whispers of truths we dare not face in the light of day. That family, our supposed sanctuary from the world's cruelties, can be the cradle of our deepest wounds, the source of betrayals that cut deeper than any stranger's blade. The Grimshaws did not merely inherit land and titles. They inherited a debt of blood, payable in betrayal after betrayal, generation upon generation. And as we delve deeper into this narrative, you'll feel the chill of recognition creeping up your spine. Perhaps your own lineage hides such shadows, buried in attics or forgotten diaries, waiting to stir at the slightest provocation. But enough prelude. The night deepens, and the story beckons like a siren's call from the fog. Settle into the darkness, dear listener, for what follows is not just a recounting of events long past, but an invocation that might summon echoes into your own life. The Grimshaw curse lives on, adapting to the times, and in hearing it, you invite its gaze upon your own hearth. Let us begin, slowly, deliberately, as the veil between worlds thins. We step now into the heart of the tale, where the seeds of betrayal were sown in soil soaked with ambition, fear, and the bitter tang of envy. Let us travel back to 1692, to Blackthorn Hollow, a place where the moors stretched like a shroud over the land, muffling sounds and hiding secrets in their undulating folds. The air was thick with the scent of peat, smoke, and damp earth, and the wind carried the moans of the restless dead from barrows long forgotten. Reginald Grimshaw was a man forged in the fires of Puritan zeal, his soul tempered like steel in the family forge. Tall and gaunt, with a frame honed by labor and discipline, his eyes were like polished obsidian, cold, unyielding, reflecting nothing but his own rigid convictions. He ruled his household with an iron fist gloved in scripture, quoting verses from the King James Bible to justify every decision, every punishment. His brother Harlan, by contrast, was a vessel of passion and vitality, broad-shouldered with wild auburn hair that curled like flames, and a laugh that could chase away the fog rolling in from the hills. They shared the Grimshaw estate, a rambling stone house perched precariously on a hill, its towers piercing the sky like accusatory fingers pointing toward heaven's judgment. Their father, old Lord Edmund, had divided the inheritance equally in his will, a document written in fading ink on parchment that crinkled like dry leaves. But Reginald chafed at the notion, believing himself the rightful sole heir by virtue of his piety and firstborn status, his mind festering with resentment like a wound left untreated. Enter Elara Voss, the catalyst of doom, a woman whose presence would ignite the powder keg of fraternal discord. She was no ordinary villager, her lineage traced back to the old ways. Whispers of Celtic druids and herbal lore passed down through generations of women who walked the line between healer and outcast. With raven hair cascading like midnight rivers over her shoulders, skin pale as moonlit marble, and eyes that held the green depths of ancient forests, Elara tended to the villagers' ailments in a thatched cottage at the edge of the woods. Her remedies, poultices of yarrow for wounds, infusions of valerian for sleepless nights, tinctures of belladonna for pain, mended the sick but stirred envy among those who clung to prayer alone. Harlan met her during a fierce storm, seeking shelter from lashing rain that turned paths to mud, and their love ignited like dry tinder struck by lightning. Secret meetings in the gloaming hours, stolen kisses under ancient oaks whose branches groaned like witnesses to forbidden acts. But secrets have a way of unraveling, threads pulled loose by gossiping tongues. Words spread through Blackthorn Hollow like wildfire through hither. Alara's a natural. Gifts were the work of the devil. A child healed from a fever that should have claimed him. A barren field suddenly fertile after her blessings. Miracles to the grateful, but deviry to the fearful elders who saw Satan's hand in every shadow. Reginald, ever the opportunist with his magistrate's robe hanging like a shroud in his chamber, saw in the rising tide of witch panic a chance to consolidate power and eliminate his brother's claim. When the village elders convened a tribunal in the drafty church hall, lit by sputtering tallow candles that cast flickering light on grim faces, Reginald volunteered as judge, his voice booming with false piety that masked his calculating heart. One chill autumn eve, as leaves swirled outside like damned souls caught in a vortex, Harlan confronted his brother in the manor's great hall. The fire roared in the massive hearth, its flames leaping hungrily and casting elongated shadows that danced mockingly on the tapestried walls, depicting scenes of biblical judgment. The room smelled of wood smoke and beeswax from the candles, but underlying it was the metallic tang of tension. Harlan, his face flushed with desperation, knelt before Reginald, his calloused hands clasped in supplication. "Brother," he pleaded, his voice cracking like brittle ice underfoot, "Alara is innocent of these accusations. She is a healer, not a witch, and she carries our child, your niece or nephew, a continuation of our blood. Spare her, and I will renounce my claim to the estate. All shall be yours. I ask only for mercy." Reginald's face remained impassive as a stone effigy, but inwardly, greed coiled like a serpent awakening from slumber. Visions of unchallenged wealth flashed before him. The estate's lands undivided, the forger's profits his alone, no brother to share or challenge. The law must prevail. He intoned gravely, his words heavy as lead, though his mind raced with schemes. That night, under a blood moon that hung low and ominous, staining the landscape red, Reginald rode to Alara's cottage, torch in hand, leading a mob of fervent villagers armed with pitchforks and holy water. They burst through the door, the wood splintering like bones, and dragged Alara forth into the night, her screams echoing across the hollow, piercing the fog like daggers. Harlan arrived too late, his horse lathered in sweat, only to find himself bound by chains of his own brother's decree, guards holding him back as the pyre was erected in the square. The wood was stacked high, damp from recent rains, but it caught fire eagerly, flames roaring to life with a hunger that mirrored the crowd's zeal, as the pyre crackled and popped, sending embers spiraling upward. Alara locked eyes with Reginald through the haze of smoke. Her voice, though weakened, cut through the chaos. "Betrayer of blood," she rasped, flames licking at her skirts and charring the hem. "Your kin shall turn upon each other, generation unto generation." The circle closes with crimson vengeance. Harlan, forced to watch his love and unborn child consumed, broke free in a frenzy of grief and rage, lunging at Reginald with bare hands. But the mob subdued him, their grips like iron vices, and he too was consigned to the flames, his final curse mingling with Alara's in a duet of damnation, blood for blood, brother. May it drown you and all who follow. In the aftermath, as the ashes cooled and the crowd dispersed with muttered prayers, Reginald claimed the estate unopposed. He married a meek noblewoman from a neighboring county, her dowry bolstering his fortunes, and sired children who bore his stern features. The family expanded into mining ventures, shafts sunk deep into the earth like probes into hell, yielding coal that powered the burgeoning machines of industry. But the curse's tendrils soon emerged, subtle at first, like cracks in a foundation. His firstborn son, Theodore, grew sickly from birth, his skin pallid and his nights plagued by visions of charred figures whispering in his ear, their voices like rustling leaves revealing secrets of betrayal. One stormy night in 1705, in a fit of madness induced by fever dreams, Theodore attacked his father with a dagger hidden in his bedchamber, screaming of "debts unpaid" and blood calling. Reginald survived the assault, the blade glancing off a rib, but the wound festered despite poultices, a constant reminder throbbing with each heartbeat. The family relocated to a grander manor, Grimshaw Hall, built atop the old pyre site in a folly of hubris, as if to defy the curse by claiming the ground of its birth. The hall was a Gothic edifice of grey stone, with gargoyles leering from eaves and windows that rattled in the wind like chattering teeth. There the hauntings began in earnest. Servants spoke in hushed tones of footsteps echoing in empty corridors at midnight, the acrid scent of smoke-permeating rooms where no fire burned, and mirrors reflecting faces not their own, faces twisted in agony, mouths forming silent accusations that chilled the blood. By the dawn of the 18th century, the curse had woven itself through generations like ivy strangling a tree. Reginald's grandson, Victor Grimshaw, inherited the mines where workers toiled in perpetual darkness, their lungs filling with coal dust like the smoke of ancient fires, coughing up black phlegm that stained the snow. Victor, a ruthless industrialist with a ledger for a heart, betrayed his own kin by falsifying documents in the dim light of his study, seizing his cousin's share of the profits under forged signatures. That night, as he celebrated in the hall's opulent dining room, surrounded by crystal goblets and silver platters gleaming under chandelier light, the massive fixture crashed down without warning, its crystals shattering like brittle bones on the flagstone floor. Victor escaped death by inches, a shard embedding in his arm, but his cousin vanished days later, his body never found, though whispers among the miners claimed he was dragged into the depths by spectral hands, his cries echoing up the shafts. Deeper into the narrative's twisting paths, we meet Amelia Grimshaw, Victor's daughter, a beauty with Alara's raven hair and a spirit unbroken by the family's gloom. Born in 1770, she grew up amid the hall's oppressive atmosphere, where portraits of ancestors seemed to follow her with judgmental eyes. In 1795, at the cusp of womanhood, she fell in love with a lowly miner named Thomas, his hands calloused from labor, his eyes holding the spark of rebellion, an echo of Harlan's forbidden romance that sent shivers through the family lore. Her father forbade the union with thunderous rage, arranging instead a marriage to a rival lord for political alliance, a union that would merge estates like kingdoms in a chess game. On the wedding eve, as candles guttered in her chamber and the wind howled like banshees outside, Amelia discovered hidden letters in Victor's desk, yellowed papers revealing his betrayal of her uncle, complete with forged seals and incriminating sums. Enraged, her blood boiling with the curse's inherited fury, she confronted him in the manor's crypt, a subterranean vault where family tombs lay like silent sentinels, the air thick with mildew, dust, and the faint rot of decay. Torches flickered uncertainly on walls slick with moisture, casting shadows that leaped like living things. "You are no better than our ancestor Reginald," she hissed, her voice echoing off the stone, "or betrayer of kin. The blood curse flows through you like poison." Victor, cornered in the dim light, his face contorted in denial and fear, struck her down in a blind rage, his ringed hand connecting with lethal force. Amelia's body tumbled backward into an open sarcophagus, her blood pooling on the cold marble like an offering. But as Victor turned to flee, the heavy crypt doors slammed shut with a boom that reverberated through the hall above, trapping him with the dead and the damp silence. He pounded on the iron until his fists bled, but no one heard over the storm raging outside. Servants found him the next morning, curled in a corner, babbling incoherently of burning eyes, staring from the shadows, and skeletal hands pulling at his clothes, trying to drag him into the earth. Thus, the pattern repeated itself across the decades, betrayal begetting betrayal, each act strengthening the curse's grip like links in an unbreakable chain. The ghosts multiplied in number and ferocity, Ilara's ethereal form gliding through the overgrown gardens at twilight, her dress trailing smoke, Harlan's voice echoing in the storms that battered the moors, calling out names of the living as if tallying debts. The mines became a nexus of horror, with unexplained collapses claiming dozens of lives, survivors staggering out wide-eyed, swearing they saw luminous figures in the dark, guiding the falling rocks with vengeful intent. As the 19th century dawned with its promises of progress and steam, the Grimshaw's wealth peaked amid the Industrial Revolution's clamor, but so did the madness that gnawed at their sanity. Elias Grimshaw, the figure from our opening vignette, was born into this tainted legacy in 1805, orphaned at 10 when his parents perished in a carriage accident on the moors, wheels slipping on slick roads, or perhaps sabotaged by a jealous relative's hand on the axles. Raised by distant aunts who whispered warnings in his ear, Elias grew into a scholarly man, his curiosity driving him to delve into the family archives stored in Grimshaw Hall's library, a room of towering shelves and cobwebbed tombs that smelled of mouldering paper and secrets. One particularly chilling entry, dated 1823 and written in a trembling hand by his great-uncle, read, "The blood calls to me in the night. I saw her tonight, the witch woman Elara, her child cradled in arms of flame, but the babe had my face twisted in accusation. Betrayal is our inheritance. To break it, one must pay in kind, blood for blood." Elias, his fingers tracing the faded ink, felt a cold draught stir the pages, as if the dead approved of his quest. Determined to end the cycle that had claimed so many, Elias sought out occultists and historians in smoky London taverns and dusty university halls, but each meeting ended in tragedy. A renowned medium, summoned to the hall for a seance around a table draped in black cloth, channeled Elara's spirit only to burst into flames mid-trance, her screams mingling with the scent of burning fabric. Undeterred, Elias pressed on, his dreams haunted by vivid visions of family members turning on one another in opulent ballrooms, knives glinting in candlelight, blood staining fine linens. We descend now into the depths of the curse's evolution, where the tendrils of betrayal coil tighter, ensnaring souls in a macabre dance of perpetual doom. Elias Grimshaw, our tormented protagonist with his scholarly bent and haunted eyes, stands as the fulcrum upon which the family's fate teeters, his quest to unravel the past igniting fresh horrors that bleed into the present. By 1847, Grimshaw Hall had become a monument to decay and despair, its once grand facade crumbling under the assault of time and neglect. Ivy strangled its grey stone walls like engorged veins pulsing with malice. Windows stared blankly like the empty sockets of a skull picked clean, and the surrounding moors whispered secrets to those foolish enough to listen, their grasses undulating like waves in an unseen current. Elias, now in his 40s, gaunt and hollow-eyed from sleepless nights, pored over the family ledger in the library, a vast room lined with shelves sagging under the weight of tomes bound in cracked leather, dust motes dancing lazily in slanted shafts of moonlight that pierced the grimy panes. The air carried a perpetual chill, as if the dead exhaled their frosty breath upon the living, and the scent of old paper mingled with something sharper, like charred wood lingering from a fire long extinguished. His research, conducted by flickering candlelight that cast his shadow large and distorted on the walls, revealed insidious patterns woven through the generations. Every third generation, a betrayal peaked in intensity, claiming multiple lives in a cascade of violence. In 1720, a Grimshaw sister, driven by greed for the family jewels hidden in a secret compartment, poisoned her brother's wine during a feast, watching them convulse as froth bubbled from their lips. She was found the next dawn hanged from the hall's rafters by a noose that no human hand had tied, her feet dangling inches from the floor. In 1765, a mining dispute over vein rights led to a cousin's murder, his throat slit in the dead of night, body entombed in a collapsed shaft where the earth seemed to swallow him whole, his muffled cries still echoing in the memories of workers who refused to venture there. Elias's own betrayal loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. It arrived in the form of a distant cousin, Lydia Grimshaw, who knocked on the hall's massive oak doors one stormy night in 1846, her cloak dripping rainwater that pooled like blood on the threshold, with eyes like Elara's, piercing green flecked with gold, and a demeanor of quiet intensity that masked deeper currents. Lydia claimed shared ancestry traced through obscure branches of the family tree and sought alliance to reclaim lost fortunes squandered by previous betrayals. "The curse binds us all," she said in a voice like silken thread drawn tight, as they sat by the fire, its warmth failing to dispel the chill. Together we can break it, cousin. I have knowledge from our hidden line, but doubt festered in Elias like a thorn embedded deep, his paranoia fueled by the curse's whispers. Lydia's letters, discovered in her valise during a furtive search, hinted at ulterior motives. She spoke of hidden Grimshaw artifacts, including a blood amulet forged from Reginald's own signet ring, said to seal the curse when bathed in traitor's blood. As weeks passed in tense coexistence, with meals shared in silence and nights punctuated by creaks in the house, tensions built like pressure in a mine shaft. They explored the abandoned mines together one fateful day, lanterns casting grotesque shadows on jagged walls veined with coal, the air growing thick with dust that coated their throats and stung their eyes. Footsteps echoed unnaturally, and the drip of water from stalactites mimicked the slow beat of a heart buried alive. Deep underground, where the tunnels narrowed and the weight of the earth pressed down like judgment, Lydia revealed her truth amid the flickering light. "I am a descendant of Harlan's lost line," she confessed, her voice echoing off the rocks. The child Elara bore in secret, spirited away by loyal villagers before the pyre claimed her. "The blood flows true in me." From her cloak, she produced a vial of crimson liquid, preserved essence from the betrayed, dark and viscous, swirling as if alive. "Drink with me, Elias, and forgive the past. Atonement through union." Elias hesitated, his hand trembling as he reached out, visions assaulting his mind like hammer blows, Reginald's face morphing into his own in a mirror of time, the pyre's flames licking closer, heat blistering his skin. In the dream, in a moment of panic born from generations of mistrust, he shattered the vial against the rock wall, the blood splattering like accusation. "Witchcraft," he accused, his voice hoarse. "You seek to ensnare me!" Lydia's eyes widened in shock and betrayal, and as she lunged forward in desperation, the mine trembled violently, rocks cascading from the ceiling in a roar of dust and debris, burying her screams beneath tons of earth. Elias escaped by crawling through a narrow vent, emerging into the rain, soaked moors coughing and bloodied, but the curse retaliated with savage glee. Back at the hall, apparitions swarmed like insects drawn to light. Harlan's charred form blocking doorways, his skeletal fingers reaching out, Elara's ghost cradling a spectral infant that wailed accusations in a voice that pierced the soul. Servants, already skittish from years of strange occurrences, fled en masse, their footsteps pounding down the drive as they abandoned ship, leaving Elias alone with the shadows that pressed in from every corner. Nights blurred into a fevered delirium of isolation. He dreamed of grotesque family gatherings in the hall's ballroom where kin smiled with sharpened teeth, passing knives like cherished heirlooms across tables laden with rotting feasts. One dawn, awakening in a cold sweat on his disheveled bed, Elias found the journal altered, new entries scrawled in unfamiliar script, ink still wet. The circle demands completion. Betray or be betrayed. The blood awaits its due. Desperate for salvation, Elias sought out a village priest, Father Thorn, a grizzled man versed in exorcisms and the darker corners of theology, his cassock frayed from years of battling unseen forces. In the crumbling chapel on the moors, amid flickering candles that cast halos on icons of saints and the heavy scent of incense curling like smoke from a pyre, Thorn chanted ancient rites in Latin, his voice rising and falling like waves. But midway through, as the words invoked protection, Thorn's voice faltered, his eyes rolling back to show whites veined with red. "They come?" he gasped, clutching his throat, before convulsing on the stone floor, his skin blistering and blackening as if burned from within, the air filling with the stench of charred flesh. Elias fled into the moors, the wind tearing at his clothes, pursued by whispers that slithered through the grass. There, in a circle of standing stones, monolithic remnants of druidic times, weathered by centuries of rain and etched with runes, he confronted the curse's core in a hallucinatory climax. Visions enveloped him like fog, Reginald's trial replayed in vivid detail, Harlan's pleas ringing out, Elara's curse booming like thunder. He saw future generations extending the chain. A 20th-century Grimshaw sabotaging a sibling's business empire with forged ledgers, a modern heir vanishing in suspicious circumstances amid digital trails of deceit. In a final, frenzied attempt at atonement, Elias slashed his palm with a shard of stone, letting blood drip onto the earth within the circle, staining the grass dark. "I break the chain!" He roared into the gale, his voice raw, but the ground split open with a groan, revealing skeletal hands emerging from the soil, pulling him down into the muck, fingers like roots entwining his limbs. His final sight before darkness claimed him, Lydia's face, merged with Elara's in a composite of sorrow and vengeance, mouthing silently, blood-bound eternally. Yet the curse endured beyond Elias's grave, unmarked and forgotten on the moors. Grimshaw Hall stood abandoned, its doors creaking in the wind, but reports persisted through the years, travelers hearing anguished cries emanating from the sealed mines. Shadowy figures silhouetted in upper windows at midnight, luring the curious to their doom. In the 20th century, an ambitious developer purchased the land for modernization, only for accidents to plague the site, workers betraying each other in fits of unexplained paranoia, tools sabotaged, bodies vanishing into reopened shafts as if the earth hungered still, and in our own time. Whispers persist in the digital ether, anonymous posts on obscure forums detailing hauntings in renovated properties built on Grimshaw grounds, betrayals in corporate boardrooms echoing ancient treachery with emails and poisoned deals. The curse, it seems, adapts seamlessly, slithering from fog-shrouded moors into the shadows of screens and servers, waiting for the next bloodline to falter. To fully grasp the icy grip of the Grimshaw curse on our imaginations, we must excavate the historical bedrock from which it springs, a rich fusion of verifiable events, enduring legends, and cultural undercurrents that lend an unsettling veracity to our tale. Let us wander the annals of history together, where fact and folklore entwine like roots delving into a grave, unearthing truths that chill the bone and blur the line between reality and nightmare. The curse's origin in 1692 aligns precisely with the infamous Salem witch trials in colonial Massachusetts, a paroxysm of mass hysteria that resulted in the execution of over 20 individuals accused of witchcraft, their trials marked by spectral evidence and coerced confessions. But this paranoia did not remain confined to the New World. It crossed the Atlantic on merchant ships and in letters, igniting similar fears in England, where the embers of earlier witch hunts still smoldered. The Witchcraft Act of 1604, enacted under King James I, himself obsessed with demonology, authoring Demonology in 1597, provided legal framework for prosecutions, lingering until its repeal in 1735. In remote hamlets like our fictional Blackthorn Hollow, inspired by real locales such as Pendle Hill in Lancashire, where the 1612 witch trials saw 10 people hanged for alleged sorcery involving familiars and curses, families turned on one another under duress. The Devices and Chattox clans betrayed kin with accusations flying like poisoned arrows during interrogations, mirroring Reginald's calculated denunciation of Harlan and Elara, where personal gain masqueraded as pious duty. Elara Voss embodies the archetype of the cunning woman, or wise woman, prevalent in rural European societies from the medieval period onward. These healers, often marginalized women knowledgeable in herbalism, midwifery, and folk magic, were both revered for their cures and reviled during times of crisis. The Malleus Maleficarum, the notorious 1486 witch hunting manual by Heinrich Kramer, branded such women as consorts of the devil, associating their potions with pacts infernal. Elara's curses draw directly from Celtic folklore, where blood oaths and Giza taboos bound individuals' fates across generations. Tales from Irish annals speak of druidic imprecations that withered lineages, much like the Grimshaw withering. The blood amulet in our story parallels artifacts like the Hand of Glory, a talisman made from a hanged man's hand used by thieves for invisibility, symbolizing power stolen through death and betrayal. The Grimshaw's rise through mining empires reflects the gritty realities of England's Industrial Revolution, spanning roughly 1760 to 1840, when coal became the lifeblood of empire, fueling steam engines and factories. Barons like the Lothers in Cumberland or the Fitzwilliams in Yorkshire amassed vast fortunes from pits where child labourers as young as 5 toiled in darkness. Their short lives ended by collapses or black lung, real pit disasters, such as the 1812 Felling colliery explosion in Durham that killed 92, were often attributed to sabotage or negligence, but folklore whispered of supernatural causes. Knockers, or atomic knockers, mine spirits that tapped warnings before calamity, but in cursed variants, became vengeful entities luring betrayers to doom, akin to our spectral miners guiding rockfalls. Familial betrayals in the narrative echo the cutthroat dynamics of English aristocracy, where inheritance disputes fueled violence. The Wars of the Roses 1455–1487 pitted kin against kin in a bloody struggle for the throne, with houses like Lancaster and York tainted by treason and regicide, much like the Grimshaw's internal wars. Historical families, such as the Percys of Northumberland or the Howards, faced executions, attainders, and mysterious vanishings, their lineages plagued by what contemporaries called curses of blood. Cultural trauma from the Enclosure Acts 1600s–1800s, which displaced peasants from common lands to benefit landowners, bred deep resentment, manifesting in folklore as curses invoking agrarian justice against the elite, a backdrop for Elara's invocation as a healer's revenge. Folklore enriches the tale profoundly. The family curse motif permeates British ballads and legends, such as the Scottish, the Twa Corbies, where betrayal dooms a knight's line to scavenging birds, or Irish tales of the Oss Sea fairies, cursing clans for broken pacts. Banshees, wailing women heralding death in noble houses, parallel Elara's apparitions, their keens echoing grief and warning. Victorian ghost stories popularized by authors like M.R. James in collections such as Ghost Stories of an Antiquary, 1904, blended historical settings with supernatural horror, featuring haunted manors where ancestral sins manifest as poltergeists or vengeful wraiths, much like Grimshaw Hall's hauntings. In a broader cultural lens, the curse taps into colonial guilt, England's expansion into empire's mirrored internal oppressions, with blood debts from slavery and conquest unpaid, fueling narratives of karmic retribution. Modern parallels abound. Dynastic corporations like the Rockefeller family faced scandals and tragedies whispered to be curses from exploited workers, or the Kennedy curse in America, where betrayals and accidents decimated a political bloodline. This intricate blend of documented history, from trial transcripts to mining ledgers and mythic elements, creates an authenticity that unnerves, making the Grimshaw tale feel like an unearthed truth from yellowed archives. It serves as a cautionary mirror, reflecting how society's traumas embed in folklore, ensuring the past's horrors never fully die, but lurk, waiting to resurface in eerie authenticity. Beneath the surface horrors of pyres, mines, and spectral visitations lies a labyrinth of profound meaning, where the Grimshaw curse serves as a dark mirror to the human condition. Let us dissect its symbols and themes with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel in flickering candlelight, probing the psyche's hidden recesses to reveal how this tale connects to universal fears, cultural traumas, and the shadowy depths of human nature. Thematically, betrayal forms the curse's pulsating core, not superficial deceit, but the visceral wound of kin turning on kin, echoing Sigmund Freud's concept of the family romance in his psychoanalytic theories, where Oedipal conflicts and sibling rivalries breed subconscious destruction. The Grimshaws illustrate inherited trauma, a psychological legacy where the sins of the fathers are visited upon the sons, aligning with modern understandings of intergenerational PTSD, as studied in descendants of Holocaust survivors or war veterans, where anxiety and mistrust pass down like genetic markers. Elara's curse acts as a metaphor for this transmission, a blood-bound virus that infects each generation's decisions. Blood itself symbolizes both unbreakable bonds and irreversible pollution in anthropological terms, as explored by Mary Douglas in Purity and Dangers 1966. Blood represents life's essence, but also taboo when spilled wrongly, evoking rituals like Aztec sacrifices where blood sealed cosmic pacts. Here it's twisted into chains of obligation, with the blood memory invoking epigenetic science, where trauma alters DNA expression, passing fears and predispositions biologically, a chilling substantiation of how betrayal can be inherited beyond nurture. Universal fears are laid bare. Familial betrayal strikes at the evolutionary foundation of security, as per kin selection theory in biology, where humans are wired to protect blood relatives for genetic survival, yet history overflows with fratricide, from biblical Cain and Abel to Roman emperors poisoning hares. The curse exploits this dissonance, transforming the home, symbol of sanctuary, into a site of horror, a staple of Gothic literature where manners like in Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, c. 1839, represent the crumbling psyche, repressing ancestral guilt until it erupts. Culturally, the narrative critiques class-based trauma. The industrial betrayal of workers in the mines mirrors Reginald's Act, a Marxist lens viewing it as capitalism's blood money, where exploitation begets supernatural retribution, echoing folk tales of oppressed spirits haunting the rich. Gender dynamics add layers. Alara's persecution highlights misogyny embedded in witch hunts, where over 80% of accused were women, as per historian Sylvia Federiци's Caliban and the Witch, so 2004, framing her curse as a feminist reclamation of power, subverting patriarchal betrayal. Psychologically, the hauntings manifest collective guilt, apparitions function as projections of the superego, Freud's internal judge punishing the ego for moral lapses, with spectral eyes symbolizing inescapable self-reckoning. Thematically, it ties to human nature's duality, ambition's corruption where power erodes empathy, as in Lord Acton's dictum, power corrupts, illustrated by Reginald's choice prioritizing estate over ethics. In an ominous intellectual reflection, the curse questions free will versus determinism. Are the Grimshaws doomed by supernatural blood, or do they choose betrayal? Perpetuating the cycle through psychological conditioning. It haunts us because it whispers a personal truth. Every family harbors potential shadows of distrust, envy, or unspoken grievances, waiting for a spark. In connecting to cultural trauma, like England's lingering guilt over empire or witch persecutions, it suggests societies too are cursed, repeating histories of betrayal until atonement breaks the chain, if such is possible. This exploration maintains the tale's eerie tone, inviting you to ponder, does your own blood whisper of similar debts? As our harrowing journey through the labyrinthine depths of the Grimshaw curse draws to its shadowed close, The Mists of Time Part 1 Final Time, revealing not a tidy resolution, but a lingering dread that clings like fog to the skin. We have traversed centuries of blood-soaked betrayal, from the crackling pyres of 1692 to the echoing mines of the industrial age, from decaying manors haunted by vengeful spirits to the insidious whispers that echo even in our modern world. The tale unfolds as a tapestry woven with threads of human frailty, ambition, fear, greed, each strand dyed crimson with the essence of kin-turned-enemy. Elias Grimshaw's fate serves as the curse's poignant crescendo. Swallowed by the earth in that ancient stone circle, his screams joining the subterranean chorus of the damned, a final payment in a debt that spanned generations. Yet his end was no end at all. The curse, like a living organism, persists, mutating to survive the march of time. Grimshaw Hall may crumble to ruins, its stones reclaimed by the Moors, but the echoes remain. In the wind's howl that carries names of the betrayed, in the unexplained vanishings that plague descendants scattered across the globe, in the subtle betrayals that fracture families today. Consider the modern manifestations, subtle yet insidious, a corporate heir undermining a sibling for control of a family business, emails laced with deceit echoing Reginald's forged documents, a distant relative disappearing after uncovering old journals, their fate whispered in online forums as accidental. The curse adapts, slithering from fog-shrouded landscapes into the digital shadows of social media and databases, where bloodlines are traced not by parchment but by DNA tests that unearth uncomfortable truths. Is it supernatural, or merely the psychological imprint of trauma perpetuated through behaviors learned and relived? What haunts most profoundly is the mirror this tale holds up to our own lives. Are we all, in some measure, Grimshaws, bound by unseen curses of our making? The blood remembers. Does yours whisper of betrayals past, small or large, that linger like ghosts in relationships? Perhaps the true horror lies not in spectral apparitions, but in the realization that betrayal is woven into the human fabric, a thread that, once pulled, unravels everything. Sleep uneasily, dear listener, for the throne of nightmares claims another soul with each telling. The circle may close, but questions linger in the dark. What debts does your lineage owe, and who will pay them next? Until our paths cross again in the shadows,